The name Colin DeFILIPPI is one of the most recognisable in New Zealand racing. The Canterbury born and bred trainer and driver has long been regarded as one of the best in the sulky. Alongside his wife Julie, they trained the 2001 New Zealand Cup winner in Kim's Girl. But life hasn't always been as rosy as that. In our final episode in this series of One on One, we sit down with the man they call CJ, reflect on his life on and off the track, and find out what's in the future for this remarkable horseman. Well, I've been waiting a wee while to do this, Colin. You probably would have liked to wait a little bit longer, I'd say, knowing you, but thanks for sharing, the time to have a chat with us.
No, good, Greg. As you know, it's not my scene talking. It's, but no, pleased to be here.
When you've had a career that's spanned as long as what yours has, gee, there's some ground to cover. Let's talk about how you got into the horses and what was a young life like for you. The family farmed, so tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, Greg, we had a pretty good upbringing. As you say, on the farm we milked cows, but we had to milk cows before school and after school, Mike and I, and it was just what you done in those days. And my father always had a couple of horses at work, never any more than two. And earlier on, I'd worked with horses, but I wasn't really over keen on them. Mike was always going to be the horseman. He could ride them good, he could shoe them, and he could drive them, at a young age. He knew what he was going to do. I didn't have a bloody clue what I was going to do, Greg, when I was at 14, 15, and I went back to school mainly for the rugby, high school. And then while I was there, I thought, well, I might as well make the most of this. So I worked hard and managed to get through school cert and UE, and it was more good, hard work than anything else, but except for maths, I could do maths.
Yeah, you loved the figures, didn't you? That was something you did enjoy.
I was good at, Greg, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Mike was telling me a story the other day. He said you were way better at school than him, and he thought part of the reason might have been that if you did your homework as soon as you got home from school, you got out of doing something with the cows, but I don't know if that's totally true.
No, that's not right, Greg. I still had to milk the cows and feed the pigs, and then we had tea, and then I'd just lock myself in the room, and I just, when I was in 5th form and 6th form, and I just done hours and hours of study. So.
Got you through. So where did you start your working life?
Well, I was going to be an accountant. I took commerce at school, and I was lucky. I knew a fellow who was good mates of the head boss at Pine Gould and Guinness, and he gave me a job there in the trust department. And I was there for 6 months, and I was doing part-time university. Now the work was easy. I was doing people's books, 3 months out of school. But the study wasn't me, I'd done that for 3 years, and after about 5 months I said to the boss, this is not really me, He said, no, you're going good. He said, keep at it. And, I wanted to do something different, so I was flatting in town with Bruce Negus and another fellow from Lincoln, and I remember the boss saying, you won't get another job easy, Well, I got 2 jobs within 3 days, I thought I'll show you. I worked in a glove factory for a wee while, just standing at a press, just cutting out, work gloves, they were. And it was never going to be, I was never going to be there long, Greg, until I got another job. And then I got a job at the airport in the restaurant, and quite enjoyed that. I had to work Saturday night and Sunday, but as it turned out, they were good days because the head chef was away and the bosses weren't there. It was privately owned, the restaurant at the time. And
so you were doing a bit of cooking?
No, I was only the kitchen hand. I was cleaning, peeling the spuds and cleaning the pots, but you'd help out with the cooking. But they was away Friday, Saturday, so we had a ball. So. Yeah. But I was there probably 6 months, and I knew then that I wanted to get home and do the horses. But it took me that long. I probably got keener on the horses when I got matey with Bruce Negus, who, when he was younger, that's all he knew was horses. And I used to go around there and stay, and as you know, Bob had a lot of success at that stage. He had Willie Wynn and Hardcraft. Willie Wynn won the Derby, and Yeah, it probably got me keen on the horses.
So between you and Mike, so there was only 2 boys
Yes.
in your family, about 18 months, something like
18
that?
months,
Yeah, yeah. So he was always keen, you weren't, you've developed
Yep.
the love for them. So we're talking what, the early 70s?
Yeah, 52, about 71 I think I went back home. Yeah.
And your dad, as you said, had some handy horses, and we'll get to see shortly. So back then, you had to get a trials and matinee licence. So that was like gymkhanas and things like that.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to get that?
No, you could get that okay, but I had trouble getting my junior licence.
Right.
I think I had about 60 drivers, which probably didn't do me any harm, Greg. I was ready for a race day licence when I got it, put it that way. But then I got my junior's licence, and I only had about 2 years, and I took out the trainer's licence, and they took the junior off me. So.
Right. I think you had about 38 or 39 wins as a junior. We'll get back to that in a moment. Tell me about taking CR to the Rowe Cup of 1974. You're pretty young, but your dad Rod entrusted you with taking that horse to one of our biggest trotting races. Not only that, you won the damn thing.
Yeah, it was a good experience, Greg. First time on a plane, it was the old Bristol freighter, and good company with Derek Jones and Jack Carmichael, Jack Splensky, and I learnt off those fellas, and they took me under their wing, and CR was just a good trotter. He took a lot of making, but he's a good trotter. Dennis Nine drove him for us in the Rowe Cup. Mike couldn't get up there, and yeah, big thrill. I'd done the work with him, and I actually done the shoeing of him. And
who'd you learn that off, the shoeing?
Dave Connick used to shoe for my father, and he
so that the Bellum? Is that
that's Bellum.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He brought the mother of Bellum off for Grice's, and lovely fellow Dave, and he taught me how to shoe. And then when I went out on my own, he used to have the blacksmith shop behind the old Templeton Hotel, and any shoes that he took off horses that were okay, he pushed them to one side, and for the first 2 years of training, that's what I used, was second-hand shoes, and put them on myself. It was all profit, Greg,
Yeah. You still potter around these days, or if one flicks one, or?
Yeah, I can take one on, but I don't. I'm getting past that. I did do most of my own for a while, but when I got busy, I got someone else.
First driving success at the old Greymouth track, Brother Eden. Still remember it vividly?
Yeah, yes, yeah. It was about my third drive, I think. I think the first day I knocked Jack Splensky over the start, and Jack didn't say much to you, but the second day I actually wasn't a good drive by any means. I was 3 wide for the last round, and
Not ideal round Greymouth?
well, better than being pulled back in the fence, Greg. I wasn't going to be unlucky, put it that way. So no, it wasn't a good drive. He's a good wee horse, and I got up and bet Jack, and he had a bit of a joke about it. You knocked me down one day and
beat me the next.
Beat me the next. So yeah.
Well, the irony there, of course, was when you started training, you started training at his Templeton property there in Trents Road.
Yeah, Jack leased me some yards, and it was good, and I started off with a small team, and I spent half a day watching Jack to see what he was doing, because he's at the top of his game in those days, and great horseman.
At one stage, I remember seeing it up on the written, etched into one of the old stables there. He had the first 5 home in the Easter Cup, which would have been monumental,
Yeah, Gina Rosa, Speedy Guest, and Vanadium, great horses, and great trainer, He really.
You would have learned a lot.
Yeah, learned a lot watching him,
Yep.
Actually, before that, I was at Auckland one meeting and with CR, and Jack was up there with Speedy Guest, and he said to me, he worked him on the Thursday morning, I think it was, and he wanted to come home for 2 days, and the horse was racing Saturday night, and he asked me if I'd jog him Friday, and I thought, oh, this is good, jogging a couple horse,
Yep.
big thing in those days. And so we were stabled on course, and there's no yards there, we just had boxes, and we'd give him a pick, So I picked him twice a day and brushed him twice a day, Greg, and he got back with other races, and he come out and won. He beat, I think, Marie Gibbons and Rob Allen, and he went, if it wasn't a New Zealand record, it was a track record, So we come back and I'm giving him a hand done, Garrett, and Jack being Jack said, blowing a bit more than it should be. as if it was my fault, you know, in 2 days. And it might have been. I might have given him an extra different feed, you know. Anyhow, he did buy me a milkshake the next day. So,
nice,
yeah.
nice. First winner, less a day now. This is a good yarn, isn't it?
Yeah. Wee bit of luck involved, Greg. I'd another trip to Auckland, or one of those trips, when I was up here with CR, and I stayed with, we used to stay with a caretaker across the road, and Huey Donaldson, who was very good for trotters, had less a day at the time, you know, he had less a day, 90 days, and all one family. And the old fellow that owned, and he run third, and it must have been the Road Cup at TR1, I think less a day run third, Bachelor Tom run second, and he's a good old trotter, and not long after that, the owner took the horse off Huey and gave him to Doug Mangus, and Doug when Doug was up north training, and I think Doug had him for 12 months and sent him home, and then Graham Holmes got him, and Graham had him for at least 12 months, and he ran one third at Motscrow with him. I was in the race, I ran second, and old Bill was a friend of my father's that owned the horse, and he asked me if I'd like to have a go at him, and you know, he's getting on a wee bit, and I thought, open class trotter, you know, so I had two of them there. So.
Yeah.
But the secret to him, and I only learned it because I got talking to Huey, and the first thing he said to me, the first thing he taught young trotters to do was canter in the lead. And I was pretty green, and I was looking at him and thinking, you nuts, you know, like, what the hell is this all about, you know? So when I got him, that's what he liked doing. He could canter on the lead. He wouldn't trot on the lead at all, you know. And he loved it, like gallop him on the lead. And you just put him in the cart every fourth day. That's what he's happy doing. And so, you know,
You got the winner. And what about the horses you beat? Nigel, Craig, Waipunamu.
Oh, pretty good field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Field,
yeah, hell of a field. Waitaki Gamble. That was an auspicious start. Right about that time, you met a young lass named Denton, Julie. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I was a bit matey with Ray McNally at the time, and he was working with Julie's father, and I think he introduced me to Julie, and
Were you a romantic type, CJ?
No, not at all, Greg, you know, but you know, I've been out with a few girls, and no, I couldn't, I flat talking to them, you know, I was bloody hopeless with the girls, you know. And anyhow, Julie and we got on pretty good. I think I took her home from Ray McNally's wedding first time. So
that's about 76, and your life changed dramatically then, because not only did you get married, but you had your son Darren, and not that long after that, Mandy came along. So things were moving pretty quickly, weren't they?
It all happened pretty quick, Greg. And I remember I had very little money, but I bought an old house down the main South Road just before we got married, and all proud to have my own house, you know, 13,000 it was. Had to borrow 9, and I took Julie to show her this house, and she took one look and said, well, I'm not living in there. And I said, well, I don't know where you're living, because I am, and I was never going to pay rent, you know. So we lived there for about 2.5 years and done it up a wee bit and sold it and made a profit.
Went from there.
Away.
Yeah. Your training success, you started off pretty well in the early 80s. You had horses like Tar Lad and Timely Frost and Hindu Abbey, and so you actually got off to a pretty good start, didn't you?
Yeah, pretty lucky, Greg. One or two come along, and Peter Cox come along as an owner, one of my early owners, and very good.
Great fella.
Great fella, great owner. I think about the first race I ever won for him was a maiden trotter at Ashburton. First race of the day, Lady Estes, and Peter was all keen, and I said, yeah, a wee bit of a show, and he said, I think, you know, you're paying good money. I said, well, you better put $1 on it. I don't know from that day to this how much he put on it, but anyhow, she got the money and paid 39s and 10s, and same day I run second in the Sapling Stakes with Motu Prince, so I had a pretty good day.
Group 1 success in the Northern Derby with Armbro Wings. I think that was your first Group 1?
Yes. Real good trainer, Alec Milne Senior. Had him tough, you know, hardened, and you know, she bet good horses, bet Armalite, bet a very good field. Again, it wasn't the greatest drive, but it was a drive to suit the horse. Like I was 3 wide and he just kept giving, you know.
Every young trainer needs a star horse, and yours came in a package that, if you looked at the breeding of our Mana by Shell Hanover, you probably wouldn't have given tuppence for it back then, but ended up being a star for you.
And didn't have a lot of breeding on the dam side, Greg. I went back over the breeding years later, and I think I had to go back to 1930 to find one that was any good out of the family. Like, you'd wonder why we'd even breed from it. Yeah, he just come along at the right time, and I probably just got him at the right age. He'd been sacked by 2 trainers, and he was an early 4-year-old when I got him, and he'd been out in the paddock for 5 months when I got him, and I didn't jog him. I'd put him in the cart the second day there and hobbled him, and I didn't mind what I seen, and I hobbled him again 2 days later, and I'd had him a week, and I ran into Lester Taddison at the Motscrow Trots, and I asked Lester what was wrong with the Shell Hanover. And I remember his words were, typical Shell Hanover. He said he could pace good up the side of a road, but went rough on the track. So I actually offered him to Mike Austin if he wanted to lease it. And he said, no, I don't want your bloody Shell Hanover. So anyhow, on the Monday, after a week, I put a set of shoes on him, and I went out and hobbled him on the Tuesday, and he went a bit rough, and I thought, what a waste of a set of shoes, you know. Anyhow, I don't know what I'd done. I got out and altered his hobbles, and I just carried on hobbling. And after 6 weeks, I had a pretty good maiden mare at the time, Narden's Luster, for Ivan Court, and I think he won 3 out of his first 8. But after 6 weeks, this horse was coming off his back and going past him, and I thought, that's not meant to be happening, you know. So he went to the workouts, and I think Ricky Oldfield drove him. I know I didn't, and he won, and he went across the line with his ears pricked, and I thought, that's good. And I expected it by then. And he went to the qualifying trials 10 days later and qualified and won, and he went back a week later and won a maiden trial. And I knew then that, you know, he's a bit of an average, so. It was about that time that they advertised, they started up a bonus scheme on the coast, you know, where you had to win 1 race at Westport, 1 at Reefton and 1 at Greymouth. So it must have been November when he won his maiden trial. So I said to the owners, Jenny and Roger, I said, you know, we might have a crack at this.
You didn't drive him at his first start?
No,
Michael drove him.
I thought I'd be nice and give Mike a drive. Yeah,
That was good.
I wasn't going. I used to go to Ashburton, and so Mike drove him, but I had to give him a dump for
the rest of it. Tell me about the brotherly love. What was it like out on the track, driving-wise? Pretty competitive?
Well, I learnt off Mike. You know, he is always good for advice, and he's a good young driver. He didn't give you much. He just treated you like anyone else, Greg. I won 5 at Westport one day. Second day at Westport, it was muddy, and you know. And Mike got up and bit me by a nose, and he was trying like hell in for me 6th one, you know. And I said to him, thanks very much, you know, you could have bit me. But no,
he's out there for himself.
Oh, yeah.
So he wins the West Coast bonus, and you're starting to think, I need to think a little bit further afield with this horse. And it wasn't too long until I think you lined up in a Pan Am mile and went a pretty good race in that behind Bonnie's Chance. So you had a serious horse.
Oh, I knew he was a serious horse, Greg. Before that, I took him to Nelson. He missed away both days, and I potted up the fence and looked after him. And then he went to Blenheim, and he won both days. Then we had a 4-year-old race on at Addington a few weeks later, and he jogged a mile on 1:57.6 and bet the best 4-year-olds. And actually met Royalty. I was there, and so yeah, that was a bit of a buzz. But you know, you knew then that he's a bit of an average.
Being a Canterbury boy, the Cup was always a race that you look forward to, and I think he ran 5th to Steel Jaw.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the next year, you line up, and he's performed at Cup Company. He's won a Group 2 and a Group 3 up north. He's done a good job, and he's run 2nd to Enterprise in an Auckland Cup at that stage. So you go to the Cup that Camelot won, and I remember John May, who was doing the commentary, saying, look at Colin DeFilippi driving for his life on our Mana, trying to get to Robin Butt. Did you think that was going to be your year? He'd had a good preparation going into that.
Oh, yeah, always hopeful, but no, I wouldn't say I was overconfident, you know.
That was the year of the fall. Diamond Moose went down,
was,
and
yeah.
you managed to miss that.
Managed to miss that, Greg. Bit of luck involved, yeah.
Second in that cup that year. Well, if you thought you were going to win it that year, the following year you must have thought, well, I'm home here, you've loomed up, and Bo Rana, the 76-1 shot, comes and gets you on the line.
Yeah.
Were you starting to think, this race is pretty hard to win?
He wasn't right early in the season, our man, and I'd started his prep 6 months beforehand, but he went fair at Oamaru and he went a wee bit better at Ashburton, and he was slowly getting better, and he peaked on the day, but yeah, for Baran to get up and beat us was a bit of a kick in the bum. So.
He won 20 races. He actually did a hell of a job, didn't he?
Oh yeah, and I think he won more. They paid $300 for him, and they won 300,000.
That's a pretty good strike rate, isn't it?
Wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And I think he won probably 180,000 in place money and 120 in win. He won definitely a lot more in place money. So
You had a health scare. Now, was that around about that time? You had a brain aneurysm, I think it was, from memory.
It was 27 years ago, Greg. So no, it was after that.
Yeah. Tell me about that time of your life, Colin. It must have been pretty scary.
Well, it was just after lunch, Greg, and I was very sure my daughter's hack. It was a thoroughbred, and I just got like a belt in the back of the neck, and I didn't know what was going on. I was there on my own, and I sat on the bucket for 20 seconds, and I thought, I'm in trouble here. And so luckily Julie was at the house, and by the time I got over to the house, I was a wee bit delirious, and she put me in the car and took me to the doctor, and he said get him into the hospital, and I don't remember any of this, to be honest. Julie was telling us, and anyhow, the first doctor looked at me and said I was on drugs, and Julie said no, he doesn't take drugs. So the second one knew exactly what was happening. So I think I was there 3 or 4 days before they could operate. They, because they had to let the swelling come down, and he was a lovely fellow of a surgeon, and he come in the room with Julie and said what we're going to do, and it's all pretty simple. You drill a couple of holes in the side of your head, and they, clamp the bleed, and pack it up with a sawdust.
Doesn't sound simple, does it?
And he said, well, you got no choice. And I said, oh, that's good. So, and I had, faith in the doctor, but anyhow, he walked out of a room with Julie, and he said to her, we're in trouble here. She said, what do you mean? You just said everything could be good. And he said, I wasn't going to tell Colin, but he said, it's a 50-50 call. So it was a lot harder on her, Greg, than me.
Yeah. Probably just as well he didn't tell you, because...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Colin, it was the start of a really tough time in not only your life, but your family's life. So you bounce back from that, and you're back race driving, and I mean, you're in the top 10 drivers consistently for 20 years. Things are going well. Your son starts driving, Darren, and I think, did he initially work for you and then went to Robert Dunn's?
No, he left school and went straight to Roberts.
Went straight to Roberts, okay. Yep. And he'd only been driving a couple of seasons and was going well. He'd driven 15 or 16 winners. The world was his oyster. Things were going well for him. And that day at Geraldine, we know what happened. He was in a car accident, and he lost his life. I know you're going to say to me, there's no worse feeling, and I'll never understand that, or let's hope I never do. But that shook you to the core, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, Greg. It just didn't change our life, it ruined our life, And for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do anything, to be honest. And it was probably the fact that I had 2 boys working for me, and good boys, and I had a team of horses I still had to look after, that probably kept me a little bit sane. No, it was hard times. And it was about that time that I encouraged Julie to come out and be part of a team, because I thought it was too tough on her being over the house on her own, I know what she's going through. So, yeah, she'd come out and she'd get up and do an hour's housework every morning before she come to the stables, and I thought it, well, she needed that, So she lined up every day, and then she's always capable of horses, and she started driving at home, and she's never going to drive race day. She had one drive at workouts, now to win. She's about as me, so...
One from one?
One for one, so...
Better than that?
Yeah, so no, that was the hardest part of our life.
Yeah. Tell me a bit more about Darren. Tell me about... I was lucky enough to meet him. When I say meet him, I spent a little bit of time with him, but I remember him being down under the old tree one cup trial, and this little snowy-haired fella was telling me that our Mana was going to win the cup. I was talking about other horses, and I was probably 3 or 4 years older than him, and I thought, who's this kid? He didn't lack for confidence, and he said, no, my dad's going to win the cup. But tell me about him and how close your bond was.
Well, he always knew what he wanted to do. He was always going to do horses. At a young age, he'd sit on his bed with a helmet on and goggles on and a whip, and he could take off mainly the North Island drivers, Morris and Tony and Mango, and he'd go up there and he'd say, who's this, and he'd have them down pat, he'd even blow the cheeks out like Mango. You could pick him, So, no, he was always going to be into horses. And he started at Roberts, and never ever once did he moan about the hours or the work, or, he just loved it. And looking back, Greg, I wish I had given him more drives. But I didn't want to spoil him,
And he had the talent. He sat beautifully, didn't he?
Did.
Yeah, no question. You guys didn't start a horse at Geraldine for a very long time. In fact, I think the first one might have been Just Rose, which Sam Otley drove to win the Geraldine Cup.
Only because she's owned down there, and Sam was driving and drove real good. And so we sent her down, and
Colin, each and every year, for 25 years now, at Addington Raceway, the Darren DeFilippi Memorials run. And I know from the juniors that participate in it, they actually value that race more. Talking to John Morrison and talking to all of those juniors over the last few years, they want to win that race even more than the premiership. That must mean a lot to you and Julie.
Yeah, for sure, Greg. Most of these kids wouldn't have even known Darren, but the trainers do, and it's nice that they support it.
Well, they do support it because it's a full field every single year, and all the juniors, I even had a couple of them ring me this year saying, I can't get a drive in it.
Yeah.
Shows you what it means. Almost like the racing gods said to you, we've been a bit unkind to you and your family, and along came this little horse called Carriage under fire. Tell me about the first time Bruce Negus said, you better have a stare of this little bloke.
Yeah, it was when he trialled him to buy him, and it was at Bruce's track, and Bruce's track is, I've been on there plenty of times, and wasn't a quick track. When I looked at him, when I first seen him, he was there when I got there, and he was small, he was a pony. But when I sat behind him, you forgot about his size. He did have a good back end on him, and I think a lot of it in the pockets, the better ones were the muscly ones. Didn't know if they was big or small, they had to be bulky. And he trialled great, and he bought him, and long after that he went to the trials, and he was just right from day one. Although I do believe that Wayne Ross and one of his mates that brought the horse down there, I think when Bruce said, yeah, get him better, we'll buy him, like it was 100,000, I think they laughed all the way back to Rangura and thought they'd finally got one over Bruce, but
I think he might have had the last laugh.
Oh, I guarantee it, he's still the best two-rod I've ever seen, I think, Greg. Nothing's come close to him. you see the odd performance from like Krug and that, but he could do, but they could do, but you know, they do it once, you know, once every now and again. He just kept doing it. So.
Colin nearly got beaten at that first start at Forbury, didn't he?
Yeah, he went down on the transport of Greg, and unbeknown to me, he was. It was a long trip. I'd stopped and picked up other horses, and you know, a young horse, a long trip can stress him. And yeah, he was ducking and diving all the way up the straight. He didn't really want to be there, and he got up and won without. I didn't want to knock him about, but I think 20 minutes after the race, he had to get the vet to him. He had a discharge from the nose, and you know, and the biggest worry was that you know, had it done any damage, but. It was the only time as a 2 or 3-year-old that he come close to getting beaten, I reckon.
Mm. He won the Sire Stakes, he won that very comfortably, but I reckon, like I'm not going to say it was the performance of his career, but on show day in the 3-year-old race, he virtually sat 3 wide for the, well, certainly for the last mile, and worked and kept, and they tried to beat him.
Yeah, it was Bob Cameron. I think I was about 6 back 1 out when I come out in the straight round to go, and as I come out, Bob Cameron was either 1 back 1 out or 3 back 1 out, and he seen me coming, so he shot out and went and parked, and he just forced the pace and left me out there. And even getting down the back, I thought, yeah, this is not going to beat you. You know, I was still confident, and he still won with a wee bit up his sleeve. You know, I went 3-12, and you know, he just had it all.
6 derbies, first horse ever to do that. It's hard to say no horse will ever do that again, but I tell you what, it'll take some doing.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Tell me what that ride was like, because when you go out on a track with a horse in a Group 1 race, I doubt you've ever gone out feeling as confident as you did every time you went out with him.
No, he just gave you confidence. No matter where you drew, what distance it was, what the track was like, Greg, it was just that much better. As a 2-year-old, I think he had 6 starts. I think Cigar had 6 starts. He won 3 and run second to Carriage 3 times. You know, he actually broke his heart. Any other year, he would have been a champion 2-year-old.
24 straight. He got to Australia, and I remember Dan Malecki's call, the world has ended. Carriage Under Fire's got beaten. The Inter-Dominion series was a huge disappointment. Particularly for you. I remember talking to you about it after it. You were pretty gutted that you didn't end your career with him the way he deserved in that Inter-Dominion final.
Quite true, Greg. You know, as I say, after his very first start at Forbury, everything just went right. As a 2 and 3-year-old, you know, we didn't have a hiccup. And admittedly, Bruce done a hell of a job with him. Like, he lived with him, he knew him backwards, you know, and
how great to do it with your great mate.
Oh, good, yeah, made it special. Yeah. And you know what Bruce is like. You know, nothing's a problem.
Laid back as they come.
Never criticised. Like, we'd talk about the race beforehand, and you know, we always had another race next week or so. We never knocked him about, and as I said, he won all those races with a wee bit in hand. You know, but as a 4-year-old. Looking back, it would have been nice to have missed that Inter-Dominion and just concentrated on the 4-year-old races. Just little things went wrong, you know, not making excuses. But he possibly could have got another 6 or 8 races without being beaten. Mm. You know, some of him, he had such a big 3-year-old season, but if he had a quiet 4-year-old race season, he would have been better for it. But that's hindsight, you know. And to do what he done, as you say, may never be, you know, could be a long time before it's beaten. So.
It wasn't long after that you started driving a filly and then mare called Kim's Girl for David Miller. And looking back at the records, you didn't let too many others have a steer. I think Mike had a steer one other time and maybe the odd junior drivers race, but you were pretty much in her sulky and driving her right from the get-go.
How I come to get the drive there, Greg, was Craig Fornley had seen her at the workouts, and he said to me, "Are you looking to buy one?" I said, "Oh, yeah, always looking to buy one." And he said what it was, so he jacked it up for me to trial. And it was a bit of money for an unproven sire. And anyhow, she won the trial, and then the owners decided they didn't want to sell it. And I thought, well, you know, I wasn't going to argue, that was their prerogative. But they give me the drive, and our first start, it was a 3-year-old in about March or April. She won at Timaru, and I thought she's a good thing. And I think I was 6 wide on the home bend and won for fun. But I don't think she ever won a 1-win race. You know, she only had about 8 starts and come to a 4-year-old, and she's nominated for show day out of the class in a 2-win race, and she's nominated for Ashburton on the Thursday in a C1 race, and never got a start in there, but got a start out of a grade, and she won that. And then she won, I think she won the next start, was another C1, another C2, so she never ever won a C1 race.
Third in Yule Stars Cup, she got herself a couple of Group 1 breeders, and I think this was about the time that Julie came into the partnership. Might have been a year earlier, but how cool to have a cup runner with Julie involved, and not only a cup runner but a bona fide cup chance.
Yeah, big thing. Like it's a family game, and you know they've sacrificed a lot. You know, when I was younger, Julie and the kids. But you know, she said she always says that, you know, she brought the 2 kids up, and you know, I was away driving and away with horses. So yeah, it was good to have a part of the team. And as I said, she got up and done the work, and then her father was there at the time. He'd retired, and he was coming in the mornings and helping us, and that was a bonus. And
very good horseman, Bill Denton.
Very good horseman. I think I gave him a drive of Kim's girl one day at home, and 2 days later, we were gearing up. I was out working one, and I'd come back in, and he's got his cart back on again. So it was pretty hard to get out of it after that. I had to, yeah.
Colin, you won the Hannon. I think you were 3rd in the Flying Stakes, but you went to Kaikoura and you didn't finish in the first 10. However, your confidence levels were pretty high after that run.
It was the best thing that happened, Greg. I drew bad, and I think I drew the second line, and I ended up 4 back in the fence and never seen daylight. And she went to the line full of running, and I thought, that won't do you any harm, girl. So it was probably a blessing, Greg.
Yeah. Tell me about the Cup and the run she got, and the way she exploded up the Addington Straight, because man, when you could hold her up for one run, there were very few as fast as her.
No, that was a go, you know. She's definitely, that was her go. And look, if you had have asked me a month ago how it was run, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. But I did look at it recently, and I got away good. I got a handy run early, but then I got pushed back, and a round to go, I was second last.
In a bit of trouble.
And I didn't know I was back there that far, but you know, I got in a 3 wide lane, and it just kept moving, and I was within striking distance. She still had a fair few lengths to make up, and again, pretty good horses. Home and Hose run second, Home Stig, you know, unlucky not to win a cup. So she didn't beat Mugs. So yeah, it was even a better run when I look back at it now than what I thought it was.
Cole, you won your Cup. You finally got the race that you'd gone so close in.
Yeah.
Yeah, big thrill.
That's the one we all chase, and yeah, great thrill, Greg, yeah.
You won a Trua in Australia with her as well. That must have been pretty cool. You've had good success in Australia, but most of it post that, but that would have been a pretty special win.
Well, we went over for Miracle Mile, and I drew bad in the Miracle Mile, and I think I run 5th, and then the Trua was a week later, and yeah, it was funny, you know, talk about good horses. And Dave Senior, the vet, had a good quote. He used to say, a good horse is a good horse in spite of what you do, not because of what you do, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that proved it. We all stayed at Dennis Wilson's. There was Yule Star, Shaker Maker, Home Stig, and Barry and I worked in together, and we all wanted to work different times leading up the week between Matura and Miracle Mile and Matura.
Would have been intriguing, wouldn't it? Having all those great horses at the same.
You know, and the track was exactly half a mile track, and wasn't a bad track, Dennis's, and Home TG went out and worked 3:20, and I wanted to work a wee bit quicker. I worked 3:13, and all on our own, you know. I think Dennis might have supplied a galloping pacemaker. And Yule Star went out and he worked 3:4 and jumped a twig on the track down the back straight and nearly ended up on the deck. And Barry sitting there watching, looking at his watch, and said, I remember him saying, oh, Homer wouldn't like that, you know, 3:4, 3 days out from the race. Well, as it panned out, Barry led, I sat in the trail and Yulestar sat in the 1-1, you know. I won, I think Barry run second and Yulestar third. I think looking back it wouldn't have mattered if we all had to work 3:20 or all had to work 3:13, you know. We still would have run first, second and third, I think.
Cole Sly Flying was about that time as well. He's a good horse.
He was a good horse. Yeah, we trialled him and Sly, you know, he was one of the early Sands of Flyings, and he was a totally different horse to what Carriage was. He was bigger, he was a different sort of pacer, but he had a good motor, you know, great motor. Yeah.
Roman Gladiator, I think he won a size stakes final too.
Yeah, and he went over and won the New South Wales
Derby. Yep.
So,
You were hanging out with some pretty fair sort of horse flesh at that time, weren't you?
For sure, Greg. And you know, I've looked up at one stage where I had 50 drives in Aussie and won 20 of them, and you know, but you only go over there to drive the good ones. And you know, I wish I could get one as good again. But.
Cole, you were in search of a premiership. When you consider the era that you came up in, you know, Morris won 4 junior drivers, Tony won a couple, your very good friend Jim Curtin tied with Tony at one stage. Heck of a crop of drivers, wasn't it? Mark Purdon came just a little bit after that.
Oh, for sure. Peter Jones, you know.
Who did you look up to?
Oh, well, I always looked up to Mike, Jack Zelensky, you know, and I drove against Morris Holmes at the trials, but he retired the year I started driving, Greg, and to think that I was going to end up driving for him it was a thrill. It was, look back on it, you know, driving for the great. Yeah, Jack and Mike. Peter Jones was a good junior driver, good wasted talent really, you know, had too much success as a young person, and you know, he's pity didn't carry on with it.
Ironically, your battle that year was with his son Mark.
Yes, and it was a good battle, and that made it even more, you know, pleasurable when I won it. So.
We're talking about the 05-06 season. I can remember talking to you in about June or maybe even into July, and you'd done a power of travel. You were going north and driving at all the Auckland meetings, and this battle between you and Mark, who at that stage was a world driving champion, he'd won it in 2003, and you were fair dinkum knackered.
I was, Greg, because unlike Mark at that stage, I still had a team at home to work, and I remember Derek Jones Jr. said to me, come here, sure, one morning about 9, and I was out, come off the track, and he said, and it was after Forbury, the night after Forbury, or the day after Forbury, and he said, Mark will beat you. I said, how do you work that out, you know? I said, I'm not giving up yet, and I think Mark was a couple in front. And he said, he doesn't have to go home and work horses. He said, you know, you shouldn't be doing this. And that was about 2 months to go, and after that I slowed up a wee bit with my own team just to concentrate on the driving.
Mm. Big thrill, Cole.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I'd run second to Peter Wolfenden, who was just an outstanding driver years ago, and I was too busy doing my own team to chase it, and not that I probably would have beaten him, but I could have given it a better shot, Greg. So.
When did you shift from Birches Road to where you are now?
It was 11.5 years ago. We just wanted to slow down. I was going to come here and just do half a dozen, and Julie talked me into putting up a few more boxes. She said, you always got people coming here to stay, so probably lucky. She normally gets it right when she gives me a bit of advice. Yeah, we built this house, and I always wanted to build a nice house for her, and we moved in probably 4 months before the first earthquake. And I remember the builder come around the next day, Alan Oldfield, and he come around that morning, and about 8 o'clock in the morning, and he said, I just come around to see if the house still standing. And I said, well, if it had fallen over, I wouldn't have blamed you. Yeah. Honestly, we was still in bed, and we woke up, and I didn't know what was going on. I reckon the whole house was moving a foot that way and 2 feet backwards, you know, because we were right in line with
the Darfield with the fault.
Yeah,
yeah.
From there to Hallsville. So yeah, it was a scary time.
Beautiful setup you've got here. How many acres are here?
Vinnie just got the 14. It was just enough to put the house and the stables and a half-mile track on.
Yep.
Greg, so.
And I know that the track's a beautiful track. You've got a watering system that self-waters the track, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's good, it's handy.
That's a mod con compared to what you started with.
Well, I looked at Dave Anderson's, I used to drive past Dave Anderson's place and think that's a nice easy setup, you know, not houses pretty close to the stables, and I went around there and talked to Dave, and he had the sprinklers in then, one of the first. So I thought,
They call him Maximilian now after he developed that property.
yeah,
Good fella, good horseman though.
He's good horseman, good to drive for. He's had a bit of luck. Yeah.
Was Stent right about when you moved here? Was it pretty close to that?
Yeah, he was. I'm trying to think whether I had him as a 2-year-old at the other place. Yeah, about the same time, Greg.
Colin, he didn't win him in a row to start with. He took a bit of making.
Yeah, he had 2 starts as a 2-year-old, and I wasn't keen on starting him as a 2-year-old, but I knew Vinnie was okay. I think the first time off the place I took him to Ashburton trials, and he ran a half and won one and on his ear, you know. So yeah, he come in at 3 and he was a bit better, and
he won his first start at about start 5 or 6 or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Tell me about his progression as a 4-year-old though, because he was the real deal virtually right from the get-go then.
Yeah. He's a lovely gaited horse, and he had a pretty good attitude. He had speed, and you know, our generation, Greg, we always look to the future. Like you don't look just for tomorrow. You're looking, 12 months ahead, and he was always going to be better with time. So, we looked after him pretty good as a 3.
He started in the Rowe Cup, didn't he? And I think Stig won that Rowe Cup.
Yep.
And he went good though. He went good.
Yeah.
But you had the future in mind.
For sure. He was probably earlier on, he was better over the sprint distance. Very good over the mile, very good over the mile and a quarter. But as time went by, he learnt to stay, and as you know, he ended up winning
He won the Rowe Cup, and
Cup.
he beat Master Lavros, and that must have been hugely satisfying. And I know how much you love the horse, so probably for the horse as much as anything, that's what you would have been thinking.
Definitely, yeah, he deserved it. And as you say, beating Master Lavros, it was a great stayer. I think he won 2 Dominions, so it was a worthy, it was a pretty special one.
Colin, he had a great record in Australia, didn't he? And the Great Southern Star was good to him. He got one of those, but he nearly won 2.
Nearly won 2. I got, he loved that sort of racing, the get up and go, and he had speed out of the gate, Greg. And
who beat him? Keystone Dell, I think. Did he?
I think so,
yeah.
But he thrived on the conditions, the warm weather, and like a lot of them do, and both of us did,
You don't mind a trip away?
No, I loved it. Our Marner was the first one. We had about 5 trips to Auckland and a trip to Adelaide with him, and then Carriage came along, and big part of the game, Greg, and just getting another one that can get another trip with will be the hard part.
Cole, I look outside now and I see just about as many, well, I was going to say harness horses, but show horses, standard breds. They are. Julie loves that side of it, and Mandy loves it too. You love going to the horse shows and seeing the big floats. I've talked to you about that a few times.
Yeah.
Some pretty impressive setups there.
Julie's always been keen on the horses, and since we've moved here, she's got keener on the hacks, and she's always threatened to take her name out of a partnership because she doesn't spend as much time with Greg, and I won't let her. She still, does a share of the work at the stables, but she's got other priorities now, the show horses and her granddaughter Taylor, who's got 2 ponies and starting to ride pretty good and getting a wee bit confident.
I was just going to talk to you about Mandy marrying Brad Hamilton. Talk about this game of harness racing. You've got to be careful who or what you say about people in it, because that's the Trevera for Hamiltons.
It is, yeah, but funny part about it, although Brad helped his father with the horses, he's always going to be a truck driver. Trucks are his life. He just loves them. He treats the truck like I treat a horse. And although he's got keen on showing, he's in hand and having a bit of success, and
he looks the part too. I've seen him all dressed up,
and he's a wee bit of a clash there with him. So it's good to have the whole family involved, Greg, and for that reason, I can't retire and we can't sell this place because, you know, we just got to keep going. And
it looks like fun times out there when you're doing the horse. You got Ricky Donnelly there, the former Grand National hurdle winning jockey.
yeah, he keeps reminding us that he won a Grand National, but you know, a good company and a good horseman, you know, all-round horseman. He's taught me things, Greg, and Joe Herbert, same, you know, very dedicated.
Let's talk about some of those younger people you've had through the stables. You mentioned Ricky Allfield before. He was part of it. Craig Thornley, Katie Cox, Lauren Lester.
I hand-picked most of my staff, Greg, right from an early age, and you know, Stephen Doody worked for us for a number of years and a good horseman, and Gary Cross, Gary Golding, and then along came Ricky Oldfield, who, you know, would be finishing up past 5, there'd be a job to do, and I'd say, go on, get away home, and no, we'll go and do this job, you know, a real worker, you know, and still is today, so.
Plenty of satisfaction in what your staff have been able to achieve as well. I mean, Joe drove win number 200 the other day on one of yours.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, seeing Craig, I remember Craig winning the Dominion final on the trotter on
Play on,
and you know, I got a bigger thrill than he did. You know, I was up the stand and I pushed my way up there and got a good posse and I was cheering him on, and you know, yeah, great. And then see Sam doing what she's done.
Sam Otley, I was just going to get to her. You know, she won that Geraldine Cup with you, which I know was so special with Just Rose, but she always talks about how kind and how much confidence you gave her.
She was pretty natural, Greg, like a good horse. You know, they either got it or they haven't normally. I remember her first win for her mother, and it was
first drive, wasn't
drive,
it? Yes.
You know, and it was a drive like she'd been out there 100 times before. It was a cool drive, and you know, it made me sit up and take notice. And she called in the stables coming home for the cadets one day with some other girls. I was dropping one girl off at home, and she asked to have a look around, and I was impressed with that. And she said to me, "I'm going to come and work for you one day," and I said, "Yeah, there's a job here for you." So. But no, she
didn't want to leave either, Cole. I remember she.
No, that Robert Dunn pinched her off. Me,
She didn't want to go. I remember talking to her about it.
She was only going there for 6 months, you know, to finish the season out to win the junior drivers, and
that was the end of that.
That was the end of that. So I thought, yeah, thanks very much. But no, she's given us. Just watching her, I think she's the best female driver in the country, bar none.
Colin, getting to 2,000 wins, just the 6th driver to achieve that. On one of your own horses, Ismock. I think you got 19.99 on Ismock as well. What does it mean to CJ DeFilippi to be in that club with Morris and Tony and Ricky, and these are all really good friends of yours?
Yeah, and great bunch of horsemen, Greg, you know. When you start off, you don't look at those milestones, you know. Think that Morris Holmes, you end up driving more winners than Morris Holmes and Peter Wolfen, but I know times have changed, but you know, you just don't dream of that. I think when I got to 1,000, I was pretty rapt to join Mike, and yeah, I was probably the only one that really didn't concentrate on the, you know, just solely on the driving. Where Morris and Tony were a bit, you know, that was their main job.
David Butcher, who's in that category, yeah. and Dexter Dunn's the other one that was in there. Yeah,
and Blair, but the same,
yes.
You know, they went, and I missed out by having my own team. I missed out on some good drives. So I was probably lucky to get there. Not only that, I never really had a big team behind me. You know, we only ever trained 16 horses. I think might have got up to 18, and you know, where Dexter had Cran's team behind him, and Ricky's always had a good team behind him, and so they should. So yeah, no, pretty proud to join them.
Cole, things have slowed down numbers wise. Which is part of your plan. It's, you know, want to have a big team, and along comes this horse. He's a sport, almost at the right time, just to keep you motivated. He's 4 from 4. Did he show you from day one that he was going to be a little bit special?
I had 2 horses at the same age, and they both bowled along nice, both by Sports Rider. Don't Write Me Off was the other one, and he won 1 from about 16, and as yearlings, you wouldn't know which one to pick out of the 2. We took him to an early trial. There was only the 2 of us in it a trial in September as a 2-year-old, just to give him a run off the place, September, October up at Rangiora, Greg, and I'm trying to dead heat it, and Ricky Donnelly's driving the other one, and he's trying like how to beat me, and he beat me by a lip, you know. It was good, but I knew that day that which one was the better one. He just a bit tougher, you know, and he's really surprised me, Greg. He's don't get me wrong, he hasn't beaten any good horses yet, and he hasn't, you know, he's not. You can't say he's a good horse, but he's. Let's just say he's got a chance of being a good horse.
Colin, that night he beat Storm, it was his third start. That's when I thought, he might be all right, this guy. He showed a bit that day.
He surprised me, as I said, you know. He's done things that he probably wasn't ready for, you know. That was his first mobile. He got out of the gate okay. He got left behind early, but he mustered speed, and he just seems to find the line. You know, every race he's been doing his best work at the finish.
Colin, what do you make of the modern day driver? Just going back to the driving side of things, it's changed so much, and you in many ways haven't changed your driving style a lot. Unlike, say, a Ricky May, who I spoke to not that long ago about how he had to change dramatically. What do you make of the modern day driver?
No, you don't really want to know what I think about Greg. No, it's a change in time, and you've got to change with them. But you know, in the last couple of years, I haven't been driving horses good enough to put in the race. You know, it's what owners want today. It's what trainers want, and we can all do it. You know, it's not hard to put them in the race if they're good enough. But, you know, we were brought up, like I said before, but you know, you always looked at the long picture. And Mark Purdon's probably changed that a wee bit, Greg. You know, probably him and Natalie, you know, the greatest trainers we've ever seen. But you know, they have 2 years lifespan. You know, he's lucky. He's got another 10. He can just take their place. They just keep bringing them out. Where, you know, I said Barry was good. He got Holmes DG as a 2-year-old, and he's still going at 9 or 10. You know, he probably lined up in 5 cups. Our Mana lined up in 4. There's no coincidence that Changeover and El Sue were trained by a good trainer, and Jeff Small, driven by a good horseman. You know, looked after him. You know, I looked up their records, and I knew a lovely couple that had a share in El Sue, and I'd seen him work before he ever went to the workouts. You know, so I followed him right from day one, and David drove him right through. I think Jeff drove him a couple of times. He never won a 2-year-old race. He had 8 starts as a 2-year-old, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. Come out at 3, went better. Come out at 4, went better. Come out at 5, won $1 million, over $1 million. Changeover won races at 2, but he was better at 3, better at 4. He won over $1 million at 5. You know, great training, great driver.
Well, he learned his trade, Jeff Small, at the Grices, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
And, you know, Monkey King's another one. His best year was a 7-year-old. You know, that's not happening today, Greg. You know, and a lot of I'm not blaming the drivers, because that's what people want. But our open class horses are getting weaker, the cup fields are getting weaker, and
the real focus is on the 2 and 3-year-old. Get them up and going.
Which I think's a shame. You know, people want to go and see good horses. They want to go and see Lazarus and, you know, Christian Cullens. And
what's left for CJ DeFilippi? Just keep pottering on. And
slowly. Well, unlike you, Greg, I haven't got the patience to play golf, and you know, feel I'm too young for bowls. So I like doing young ones. You know, we got a couple of young ones here, and you live on hope, and you know, I still enjoy that. But I would say another 12 months I'll just be driving my own, and see what happens.
No regrets, CJ?
None at all.
Been a good life on the track, hasn't it?
It's been a journey, Greg. You know, it's been great. Yeah. The training and the driving, I like both, and as I said, it's even more enjoyable when you got your family around you.